Okay, brilliant. Well, Michael, would you be able just as we start, I'm actually interested in how you got into this, how you got into researching UFOs. What was your initial gateway into this topic?
Sure. My dad used to take me to a place called Victory Air Museum. This was many years ago, not too far from Chicago. And they had some old warbirds hanging out there that were in a field, and they had cracked windshields. They had weeds growing up through the wheel wells. All of the flight controls were kind of tattered and they looked like skeletons. And it just had this ghostly appeal to me. That was my start in aviation. And I would go to the air show with my dad in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. From there, it kind of led to historical UFO cases and research. Living near QFOS, that was 2457 West Peterson Avenue, downtown Chicago area. They gave me access to 50,000 files, so that was kind of a good introduction. Later, I learned about Leonard Stringfield and his collection, and then just started really drilling down under the crash retrievals and getting his cases illustrated. So that's kind of how I started it.
And what was it like at that time, uh, obviously it's kind of more acceptable now, I suppose, even though there's still a
Right.
stigma around it. But what was it like for you at that time researching it?
I just like to get the cases from the actual witnesses and then take their rough sketches and create full color renderings and detailed, refined drawings to make the cases come alive. So that's just kind of what I've been doing. And now we see it out in the news every day now. They're seeing things over Washington, D.C., they're seeing things over Arizona a couple days ago. We had the Immaculate Constellation come out talking about a crash retrieval program, a reverse engineering program. So it is coming into the forefront. It's mainstream now. It really is.
Do you think that the stigma around the topic is manufactured? Do you think that it's part of is there a concerted effort to try and make it seem as if it's sort of weird or crazy to talk about this?
Well, the giggle factor is still in place, but it's been reduced. That's
Hmm.
kind of what we're dealing with now. I mean, you will still get ridiculed at work if you talk about this subject. And absolutely, the government is involved in disinformation, muddying the waters. They like to take their own craft and paint it with the UFO brush as a cover to hide their own deep black programs. So that's going on. And absolutely, yes, the disinformation is still apparent at this time.
Because I find it quite incredible with I've seen footage over the last while that's actually properly blown my mind. I mean, I cannot believe I just don't even know how someone who considers themselves skeptical can sort of do this weird rationale where they rationale out of it. I don't know if you saw there was the George Knapp recent documentary, or it's on Netflix as a
I
series.
did see it, yes.
Did you see I think it was is it UAP or the one that submerged under the water and then came
He,
back out of the water
I
again?
think he had a quick clip of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is just like absolutely mind-blowing footage.
Well, the whatever these UFOs are, they're tricksters for sure because they can materialize and dematerialize at will. They can go from one medium to the other at will. So they can go from water, they can go to air. They've been seen to go into the sides of mountains with no impact. So I don't think we're talking about physical craft here. There's something else going on. That appears to be the case. And then we just had a lot of information that these things are plasmas. They're not drones, they're plasmas because when we send up a US missile up against this thing, when it hits the plasma splatters and then it recongeals back together again. So now we're not talking about a nuts and bolts craft here.
Um, what are your ideas about the origin points of this? I mean, I know that I recently watched the movie Contact. I don't know if you ever seen that. I think it's
Oh
Jodie
yeah.
Foster.
Oh yeah.
And it's quite an interesting movie, and they have the kind of idea about I think the aliens in that movie, they send back a transmission of Hitler's speech at the Olympics, as in that was when they first hurt
Yeah.
humans. No, I think it goes back further than that, but I just want to know what your opinion is about where you think the first kind of interaction between whatever these craft is and humans.
Sure. Well, if you look at the historical record going back to not, I would say, recent times, but there's a lot of cases in Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico, 1859, where a golden trumpet was seen over the town for 3 hours, seen by hundreds of people. If you go back in further time, you've got the Christopher Columbus sighting. So then we can go even further back in time. There's records of the Romans where shields came down during battle. So this has been going on for thousands of years.
And I also, there's a couple of interesting ideas that, well, I came across it again in that George Knapp series about one academic talking about how he thinks that it's our future selves, like looking back at us. I don't know what do you think that it's an actual, no, a completely different species from a different planet? Or do you think it could be something like our own?
That's one theory that they're extratemporal, and I think there's some legitimacy to that. Absolutely. But we're looking at more than one thing here. We're absolutely looking at a multi-headed hydra. So you've got man-made craft, that would be one. You have potential extraterrestrial craft. You have alien craft. You have USOs, unidentified submerged objects. You have interdimensional craft. You have extratemporal. So now we're up to six. And it can't just be one explanation. There's got to be a lot of things going on. Absolutely, man-made craft have crashed, and people might think it's something ET, but it's not. So there's just so much going on with this.
Yeah, and is it possible that there is, I mean, like something, I don't know, interdimensional or something, it strikes me as maybe it's not just like, oh, these craft are flying from the opposite side of the galaxy. I don't know, maybe that's true, but maybe that they're like so advanced that they can use, I don't know, dimensional, interdimensional travel or something. I don't know. That's just an idea that I have
Yeah.
because it seems um like we haven't identified a single planet in the universe so far that we know of. But I don't know if that is that what the mechanism of travel is, like what how they would be getting here.
Mhm. I think they're local. They don't have to be 1.2
Okay.
million light years away. They're local. They could be living under the oceans. They could be underground. They're local. So there's no telling where these things could actually live. Absolutely under the water. Richard Dolan's coming out with a book, probably 700 pages. It's going to be 3 volumes. He's going into USOs, and he's doing the deep dive into USOs. So so be the definitive work on the subject.
But would that then potentially push whatever these things are way back into the past of Earth? Like, could they, like, what is the time scale then?
Yeah, it could be thousands of years. It could be thousands of years. So this is certainly nothing new. Ivan T. Sanderson wrote a book called Invisible Residents, where he looked at all the Navy cases, and these cases can't be denied. You know, this is something that the U.S. Navy acknowledged. They confirmed it. These things have been caught on Taiwanese fishing trawlers. When they brought up the nets, they had USOs caught inside. So this is absolutely going on.
And why was it that Roswell was the incident that kind of exploded? It was because of like the print media becoming more advanced, more popular, and then that coincided with this event, or what was it
Well,
particularly about that event?
if you look at the flap of 47 and you look at the flap of 52, these were two time frames where there was an exponential growth in sightings. But I think what makes Roswell different, it was the first time that the United States government actually acknowledged that they recovered one, and it was printed. And then less than a day later, they retracted that statement. So they made an acknowledgement. And when you look at the firsthand military witness eye testimony from the 519th Bomb Group members, they're all gone now. So in the minds of the government, it's cover up complete, but they're not describing a weather balloon. They're
Hmm.
not describing a weather balloon. Why would you need an 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy truck to ship a weather balloon 35 miles north of downtown Roswell through Main Street, cover it with a tarp, and then go into the back section of hangar P3 Building 84. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you even bother if it was a weather balloon? So something else is going on. And then we've got reports that there were two teams of 50 men for 3 days crisscrossing the debris field um, on their hands and knees and finishing up with industrial vacuum cleaners. This is for a weather balloon now. So yeah, we're being lied to on many fronts.
And what is the like? I know that there's lots of different metals, or you were saying that the materials used on these crafts are you're saying like plasma, like they dissolve and then they come back together again. But I know that on some of the metals that have been analyzed, like it is metals that we have here, but the way that they alloy together is so bizarre that they don't know like what the hell is
Mhm.
going on with it. But what is the general makeup of like about even Roswell or the general consensus on what materials are used in these craft?
Well, as far as the inner workings, I can't claim that I'm a metallurgist, so I can't
Yeah.
make that kind of judgment call. But looking at what the military witnesses are telling us, they're telling us that these things look like they were 3D printed. They look like they were built by stacking atoms at the atomic level. They're saying that the seams integrated into the skin of these craft are so fully integrated you can't put a razor blade in between there. It's like liquid metal. That's what the witnesses are telling us. They're impervious to bullets. Lasers don't have any effect on them. That's what was certainly looked at the Foreign Materials Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base during the late 1940s. They were looking at these things, analyzing this. That's what our witnesses are telling us.
And there's also I've seen other reports about how they're potentially sort of like that the whatever the user is or whoever is um piloting these craft, that like it's somehow connected to them. I've heard reports of people saying that
Yeah.
that it's like almost like we are connected with I don't know, like could be like AI. There's like an interface with the operator of the craft.
That's exactly correct. That's allegedly what was going on with Roswell, that there was a symbiotic biocortex connection between the pilots and the flight controls of the vehicle. Not flight controls that we know of, but it was almost as if you couldn't fly the craft without the pilots in it. So there was this connection between the two, the brainwave frequency going on. Very advanced system. Then you can see why the government would want to get their hands on this thing. If we can integrate that technology into our fifth and sixth generation stealth fighter aircraft, we'd be a force reckoning type of a situation where we'd rule a battlefield, no problem.
So do you think that's the main reasons for the secrecy as kind of like a national
Yeah, the
security?
secrecy is generally not that aliens are here or ETs are here. The secrecy is wrapped around the propulsion system associated with these vehicles and the weapons development that you can attain and exploit from the vehicles. That's the reason for the cover up. And the fact that it could take out the trillion-dollar industry. So coal fire plants, solar plants, wind fire plants, nuclear power plants, they'd all be obsolete overnight if they would release the technology to the world, but they won't do it.
Is that got to do with sort of like competition between nations and the Earth?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Um,
yeah.
because
But there's
it's
a transnational team that's involved in this where they
okay.
don't have any boundaries and they're working as a united coalition. So you can call them masters of the universe.
Uh,
It's what these people are doing, but we're all paying the price for this. I mean, we are still flying 747s now that just chug along at 510 miles an hour, and it takes you 20 hours to get somewhere. And this is 55 years ago that that plane flew, and we're not flying any faster now than we were 55 years ago. So it's obvious that they're holding back on the technology.
what what is the kind of breakthrough moment, do you think? Like what is the threshold of evidence that is just so um sort of that just pushes the barrier so much that it just can't be sort of suppressed anymore?
Right, right. Well, you've seen recently we've had these congressional hearings in Washington, D.C. We've had onesies and twosies come forward. That's not going to be enough. I mean, what we need is a united coalition of firsthand military witnesses, along with debris, bodies, and craft, the physical hardware. Anything less than that, and we will be here another 80 years and we still won't know what's going on, and we'll be just spinning our wheels. So it's a point now where we absolutely need the physical hardware to move this whole field forward. And that's why the crash retrievals are so important, because they have the bodies, they have the debris, and they have the craft all wrapped up into one. And so what I'm saying is that the crash retrievals will be the vehicle to facilitate disclosure.
And on the crash retrieval point of it, how do they successfully manage to intimidate witnesses, and like what is the tactics there on keeping people to remain quiet?
Uh, we've got we've got a number of witnesses within the Stringfield collection that talk about how the government has a long arm and they will stop at nothing to keep this under wraps. You're talking about the big boys here. This is the varsity team. You're talking about a multi-trillion dollar industry. You've got $100 million per day was spent on black programs. Obviously, some of that money was siphoned off to fund these reverse engineering programs. Multiple NDAs have been signed. They know that if they go to disclosure, there'll be so many lawsuits. And so it's not, there's no incentive for the government to come forward. They're actually going to lose out on it. So that's why it's incumbent upon us as researchers, public, to try to track down these remaining legacy witnesses before they all pass away. We have to maintain this history. We have to.
Do you think that there's an intelligence on the other side that is kind of maybe aware or knows that this is what's happening, and they are presenting, I mean, like showing crafters or coming forward in a certain way, and then they're kind of like, because it seems like the cases are increasing, it seems like it's gaining momentum, it seems like there's some sort
It
of
is. It
intelligence
is.
behind it. It's not just like random.
I'm skeptical about what's going on lately. It's like we're being built up for something.
Hmm.
We're going to reach a crescendo about something, but I'm very skeptical about how the narrative will be played. It could be played in their favor. So this is something that we should be aware of. Because if you see something out there that might look like a UFO, but it's not, there's telltale signs that can be reviewed, like pipes and cylinders on the bottom of the craft, electrical humming noise like a sewing machine or a transformer. If you have a craft that's tested on Thursday nights, if you have a craft that has vents on the bottom, also has lights that go off in sequence, there's a whole laundry list of things that can be looked at to determine who's ours and whose are theirs. But at this point, it's so seamless now that they've got this stuff mastered. They know exactly what they're doing. So if they want to pull something, and who knows what the timeline is, it will be seamless. It will look like the real thing.
So what is there what is there to gain though ultimately? And I mean, I know monetary there's huge amounts to gain, but like in terms of just being a human, or like, the sort of amazing philosophical other questions that are we can ask about this. What is the incentive for people to just consistently want to, I know there's the money element, but it also almost seems like how much money is worth, withholding this kind of information.
Well, you would think that we all deserve the truth regardless of what their agenda is. And you see that people have come and gone long before us. And you've got Murder Incorporated, it's included too. So you've got James Forstall, you've got Marilyn Monroe. There's a whole list of people that tried to come forward with this. So maybe this time around we'll be able to make an impact, but it's going to take more than one person. It's going to take more than just one person coming into Congress. And every time we have these congressional hearings, all we hear is that we can't tell anything to you unless we speak to you in a skiff. And you've got all these people watching all this. We never hear about what's going on in there, and it never moves the ball forward. So that's why it's really going to be a grassroots, a different angle approach to move this to disclosure.
And why is it still so successful, the kind of disinformation stigma campaign that the government produced? Because I mean, by their own admission, I mean,
Mhm.
Commander Fravor's report is so
Right.
you either think that guy is a liar or it's real. I mean, I don't know
Sure.
how anyone can. There's no other option. So it blows my mind that it's still so successful that people still kind of laugh it off.
Yeah,
Um,
well, the acclimation process has been going on allegedly for 80 years, and they've definitely made a mockery of this to control their own narrative, to set people off on the wrong course, and to derail investigators and ridicule and belittle, condescending. These things have been going on for so long. We've got reports that we kind of talked about it before. When there's a sighting of something that's one of ours, they want people to think that it's alien because it's the greatest cover up in the world. It works perfectly for them. So it's still profitable for them to build these obsolete aircraft. And that's what we're dealing with here. So hopefully, with this crash retrieval thing kind of taking a higher percentage now, maybe some more people will come forward as a united coalition. Some of these legacy classified USAP unacknowledged special access program, maybe they're going to think that this is enough and they'll come forward. We can only hope so.
what how long do you think it took them to successfully reverse engineer these craft?
Sure. Well, if the Italy case from 1933 is correct, and if the 1941 Cape Girardeau crash retrieval is correct and authentic, you talk about where we are now. They've had a lot of time as far as when it was successful, at least by October 1954. But I've got cases prior to that, many cases prior to that, that indicate that a breakthrough in propulsion was made prior to 1954. So um, I'd say late 40s time frame is where they
Wow.
started to really make some good progress on it. Because
S-
this is exactly what the witnesses are telling us.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not telling us they're seeing alien craft. They're telling us that they're seeing craft with uh, tubes on either side, and it has an atomic discharge. And when these things hover, there's like these lasagna noodle flames that come out that look like atomic discharges. We're not talking about alien spacecraft here. So somebody made a breakthrough.
And do you think that I mean, I haven't researched this, but I've heard it being mentioned before that the Nazis and Hitler were very interested in researching this kind of stuff. Is there
Right.
credibility to that, or is
Yeah,
that
I've heard the German contingent to all this, and I think there is some core of reality to that, but I'm skeptical as well. So again, we need more evidence. We need more hard evidence, but it's so difficult because they have multiple locations around the country where they have this information and it's not accessible to the public. So again, we're left stranded, and senators and congressmen can't get to it because they don't have a high enough security clearance. So that's what we're running up against.
and um was it the was it the Cold War that really drove the necessity for the increase in researching reverse engineering this, or was it more of a, as you're saying, like a kind of breakaway, maybe government that wanted to just have this power, have this ability to, I don't know, become, as you said, gods of the universe?
Mhm. I don't know if it's directly related to conflicts because I think the US military would like to know more and reverse engineer more and exploit technology, regardless if we're in a war or not.
Okay.
So I think it's independent of any type of a world war. They will still continue doing research in underground facilities. So again, they have their own funding mechanism, they have their own Air Force, they have their own Navy. They are essentially above the law. They operate as cowboys in the West. They have a blank check and they have no oversight. And so whatever this group is, they're essentially free to do what they want. And we're kind of again left stranded here.
Um, the other thing that I find fascinating is well, I've come across it before, but I have been diving more into it about the Phoenix Lights and the kind of experience that a lot of people there had. A lot of people had a very almost positive experience
Mhm.
after witnessing um this event. Do you think that there is that the whatever intelligence is operating these craft, they know what is kind of happening, or they're sentient enough to know like what to give us.
I think so, because if you look at 1967 at Malmstrom Air Force Base, where we have the ICBM launch control incursions, the same thing was going on in Russia at the same time. So obviously there's an intent, there's a design to it, there's an intelligence beyond these things. And when Boeing engineers came back 2 weeks later after these events happened, they went up and down through the entire system. They could find nothing wrong with those computers. So whoever or whatever was tampering with our ICBM launch codes and launch complexes, it was certainly on purpose and it was by intent. So I absolutely think that they know what's going on. Yeah, they absolutely do.
And I know that there's many reports during World War II of um, fighter pilots flying and coming across these craft.
Sure.
Um, are the reports, especially, are the reports different? So, like for military personnel, are they experiencing a certain kind of UFO or or the submersible, or and are civilians experiencing a different kind, or is it a similar craft, across the
Yeah,
board?
interesting, interesting. Well, I'd have to go back to the early 1950s, as you may know, during 52 timeframe and prior to, but it was essentially the three first months in the decade of the 50s where there was a standing order from the Air Force to shoot these things down. I mean, they literally told the pilots to shoot these things down. Later, after we lost multiple pilots and planes, the Air Force rescinded that order. And this is something that they don't want to talk about. They want to let that part of history go away. But we lost a lot of planes and we lost a lot of pilots because of trying to intercept these UFOs, and they couldn't do it. So they said, you know what, we're done with this. We're going to rescind the order. And that's how that went down. So I don't know if there's a difference between what the military is seeing and what the general population is seeing. I think it's all one and the same. I don't think they discriminate what caliber of people that they interact with.
And do you think that they are using, like, are some of the craft drones, or are most of these craft operated by some sort of life form?
Well, if you look at what's going on the last week, there are some saying that there's a mothership parked outside the atmosphere that's releasing plasma drones into our atmosphere. And that could be the case. It's very possible. But we still need more analysis. We need where is this mothership? Can we see this thing? Where is the evidence? But it's getting really strange now because we're seeing this over the nation's capital. The same thing happened for two consecutive weekends in July 1952. Almost the identical craft, identical formation over the Capitol building. Phoenix a couple days ago had something. Air Force bases are getting overflown. In the UK, the bases are getting overflown. So it's reaching some kind of a convergent point here.
And you mentioned about how these craft can travel in between, like they're non-physical, and they can move through mountains and water. And do you think that these places where, like, the capital, maybe they know that the capital is they obviously would know that it's an important place, but like Phoenix, do you think that their bases are in these places, or that they're like kind of like, I don't know, a portal or whatever it is, like a center where that's why they're seen there most often?
Well, I don't think they're necessarily located at where we're having the sightings now. They don't need to be restricted to any geographic location because if they come from the oceans, they can go anywhere they want to. They don't have to be in just one location. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And I hope we're going to find out something as the days and weeks progress here, but it's absolutely increasing. I mean, it's all over now. I don't know how people can deny it. But again, the giggle factor is in place. And it seems like the American public won't believe anything until the president gets up there and makes an official statement. We don't need the president to make an official statement. We've got an overabundance of evidence on our own. We don't need confirmation from political figures.
Do you think that the Trump presidency will make any difference? Do you think that there's any chance of something happening?
Well, if it's true, why didn't he do it last time? He had
Yeah.
4 years to do it the last time and he dragged his feet. Maybe it wasn't the correct time, but I think people are getting tired of waiting. I think the acclimation process has run its course now. I mean, how many more magazines and how many more radio interviews and TVs and movies can you integrate this subject and with the imagery? People know about this. People are essentially we're at the end game of this acclimation drip, drip, slow drip process. It's a done deal. It's already been wrapped up. Another documentary and another movie about UFOs is not going to make a difference at this point. We've already reached that critical mass portion. So maybe they're planning to move this whole thing into the next step with close-up visual sightings, maybe a landing, who knows, but it's absolutely picking up.
Um, did you see the clip of in the same documentary, the George Knapp one, there's one of the kind of the jellyfish craft floating over the US
Yeah, I saw
base.
that one. Yeah.
Do
Mhm.
you think that that's, I mean, it seemed like a positive, well, obviously it's highly risky, but that people within intelligence communities are trying to get information out, is that seems like a positive sign.
Yeah, I don't know if they had anything to do with that as far as something that was on purpose. It didn't look like it, but very strange configuration. It doesn't look, it almost looks more biological than it does man-made. It's a very bizarre looking craft. I don't know what that is. I'm not clear exactly what that could be. Maybe it's a drone, but it didn't look like a drone, right? So not sure
It
what
it
that was.
it looked totally bizarre. I mean,
Yes, very bizarre.
um, so like again, I don't know how people can, well, maybe they don't see these clips, but I don't know how anyone with a kind of a slightly inquisitive mind can look at something like that and not be completely perplexed as to what it is. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
a weird ability of the human brain to sort of dismiss something if they want to dismiss it. Um, and do you think that what is your feeling on how things could change? What is the impact this would have? I mean, it would change our understanding of the world, obviously.
Right.
But what do you, if there is that threshold piece of evidence, what do you think the impact could be? Like, what do you think could happen?
Well, I think the governments are afraid of their stronghold and grip on the population because then we would all be, maybe we would be less patriotic because we're not confined to one government anymore. If we're all one people, then these lines separating the countries kind of fade away at that point. And the governments of the world, they don't want that because they want to stranglehold their citizens. So you could see that's another incentive for them not to come forward. But the UFOs don't care about that. They're going to show up regardless. So I say, bring it on. Let's go. You know, we've been waiting 80 years. Let's go. What's the point of waiting now? It can't be denied.
It is quite it's quite it's quite exciting, but it feels like almost like a loading phase, you know, in a video game where you're like loading, waiting for
Right,
the new, it's like you can almost kind of be in it, but you can't quite be in it because it's not just
right,
there yet. You're still kind of in the waiting phase. Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the speeds of these craft, like the speeds that they're going at.
right,
What is the like what is the sort of physics, or so you're saying that like reverse engineer these crafts means that these people working in these government um these like sub government projects, that they have attained a level of sort of physics and understanding of energy that is would shift our world into a totally different understanding of how the natural world works.
well, if you look at the historical record, these things have been tracked going between 8 and 12,000 miles an hour. Now, using standard physics with a pilot inside and making 90-degree left-hand turns at that velocity would absolutely be fatal to the pilot. So obviously, we're not talking about Newtonian physics here. It was described as me as looking more like quantum physics. So if you want to understand this subject matter, you have to get into quantum physics and obviously they're using a different type of technology here. They're just not using liquid rockets. Now, we tried to intercept these things back in 51 time frame in West Germany, and we couldn't do it. We put up our best fighter jet aircraft trying to intercept these things, and there's nothing we could do. These things could go 9,000 miles an hour, make a left-hand turn, and it's clear that if the crash retrieval cases are real, which they are, and they have successfully reverse engineered the technology, they've integrated it into their own craft. And so the level of technology that has gone into this and the fact that the secrecy has been so high and all the money that's been poured into this subject was classified higher than the atomic bomb during World War II, was classified above top secret. And that's where Timothy Good got the name of his book, Above Top Secret. So that's where that comes from. That's why we're dealing with the story of the century, the story of the millennium here.
But so if there's so Newtonian physics obviously works at a certain we
Right.
understand it works on this sort of time space continuum on our understanding. So does that mean that then there's an ability to that in interdimensional space that
Mhm.
different levels of physics operate? So it's not just you have Newtonian, but then if you can sort of get yourself out of it, then you can enter a different realm of physics.
Well, I can't claim that I'm a theoretical physicist, but I
Yeah,
do know that these things work on the principles of quantum physics.
yeah.
And we have to throw out our previously known Newtonian physics to even begin to understand how these things actually work. It's almost like they're warping time when they fly. They don't fly in a linear mode. They can dematerialize when they want to. So they've got to control, they've absolutely controlled gravity. And if gravity, space, and time are interconnected, now you can see why this thing would be going 9,000 miles an hour one way and then appear over here somewhere else in the blink of a second, because they're not traveling like we know of traveling using Newtonian physics. Are they time travelers? Are they getting involved in quantum physics? That's the way I think it's going.
It does also interest me that even just from a very just a thought experiment, that if
Right.
we extrapolated that our species lived for the next 1,000 years, we would eventually hit this technology anyway. Like we'd have
You
to in terms of just advancement of technology.
you would think so.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting again that people would dismiss it, seeing as it seems like quite the natural conclusion, the evolution of technology. And you, on these reverse engineered, are they using they're not using pilots on them, or have they found out how to actually overcome the issues with the human body?
Well, it's both actually. There's crew members inside, and a lot of them are drones too. So it's a mix of both.
So they have successfully figured out how to overcome the impact like of the force of the or there's something within this craft that's actually
Right.
stopping them from experiencing the sort of death or destruction of the
Right.
human body.
Th that appears to be accurate because of the mountains of evidence we have from military pilots that have chase these things, and the fact that, yes, we have our own craft based on the originals. So the answer is absolutely yes. We've got multiple pilot reports. We've got DC pilot reports from 1950 that saw things, and they didn't think it was alien. Their gut reaction was this was a top secret U.S. military aircraft craft. So we have made the breakthrough.
I mean, that's phenomenal. It opens up so many questions on
Oh
what
yeah.
is possible in terms of um, just the world. Or like it does change reality in terms of how we can see what's possible. Um, and on the Phoenix Lights, do you think that that was like a reverse engineered thing, or was that an actual UFO encounter?
I'm still not completely clear exactly what that was. There were more than one. Some people say it was a holographic image projection technology. I wouldn't put it beyond them. Others say that you could just fit the entire fleet of B-2 stealth bombers on the upper wing section of the craft. I don't have any reason to doubt them. So I don't we really need to get more data as far as the military interaction. Now, there were two F-15s that were scrambled from Luke Air Force Base. Where is that footage? They took footage of this thing. Where is that footage and why won't they release it?
And a lot of the air traffic controllers, anything like that, that's all been scrambled as well. Like local airports that had.
Well, they've got their own radar systems. Not all these UFOs show up on radar, but if they do, you could theoretically pull the tapes, but they're not going to let us see that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, it's frustrating. And just a couple more questions, Michael,
Yeah.
and then we can wrap it up. Um, Often I wonder what do you think I mean, I don't think the intent is obviously negative from these beings or whatever they are, because if they it was, they would have done
Correct.
something by now.
Correct.
But do you think that it is like we study other animals? Are they studying us? Or what do you think that the intention of these beings is?
All I can go by is what we have in the historical record. So if you look at the primary locations of where the hotspots are, a lot of these things are at military bases. They're looking at our atomic nuclear weapons program, Los Alamos program. They're looking at bombers. They're looking at the loading of nuclear weapons. They're monitoring our capabilities. So you've got Roswell 509th Bomb Group. You've got Alamogordo Air Force Base. You've got White Sands. You've got Los Alamos. You've got the Atomic Energy Commission at that location. So, and these craft are being seen over those locations. So somebody is monitoring our nuclear capability. It seems to be a priority for them.
Do you think that is because they, I mean, I've heard this theory before about how that is like the potential that we can do damage to this planet, or like maybe this planet is a very important planet that we're not able to even understand the importance of. I don't know. Um, and that they're monitoring our behavior to see what we will do, or
We can only hope that if the current military situation in Russia, America, Britain, Ukraine, if anything actually starts going at that location with missiles being traded, that whoever or whatever would intervene on the entire population of the world, because you can see where this is heading. It's
hmm.
very clear where this is heading. So if someone doesn't intervene, this is not going to be good for everyone. We're going to see what happens here. But if something isn't done, this is just going to keep on ramping up.
It's a interesting point. I mean, I had I know about the theory from Hiroshima and like and how that seemed to increase activity and sightings
Mm,
of like our nuclear capabilities there, but I actually
right.
haven't put it into the context of today, which is quite mad because our nuclear capabilities have gone up like thousands of intensity. So,
Absolutely.
but it's
Absolutely.
also kind of a nice thought as well to think that it's not just like just us crazy people with nuclear weapons, that there's something else monitoring, because
I hope so.
yeah, I
I
hope
hope
so
so.
too. Um, and do you think that if that potentially that because we're at the stage now where we're trying to go to Mars, we're trying to become a species that travels in space, that obviously that's another factor that they're potentially monitoring us, seeing like who are crazy neighbors or whatever.
Right. Well, I guess it's going to be up to that intelligence to decide if we're worthy to go off the reservation, you
Yeah,
know. Hmm.
Genie Mac. That I mean, it is really fascinating. I find it will shift our species into a different
Oh
time.
yeah.
It's quite an exciting time period to be alive in, I think,
It,
if
it's
it
it's exciting because
materializes.
it's being acknowledged over the nation's capital, just
Yeah.
like it was back in July 1952. The exact same craft, the exact same formation, and it's being reported. I'm glad, let's do it. Why continue lying at this point? Let's just do it. We can move forward as a people, even if there's a sinister truth in back of all of this, which I've heard that too. We've heard that statement multiple times. So at this point, we just let it roll at this point. There's the evidence is so undeniable, and we don't need to wait for a political figure to acknowledge it. But that seems to be the case in this country. We like to have things in a proper box with a label and everything justified and authenticated. Why, that's really not necessary. All you got to do is go on NICAP.org and look at 1952, and it's a done deal right there. Military pilots talking about the sightings, it's a done deal right there.
Yeah, I've just the last couple of questions. The other thing I want to ask you about is what do you think of um the kind of the cow, the like skinwalker thing where they
Hmm.
have the cows and they will take
Right.
material from a person. They'll I've seen multiple cases of that where someone will be shot almost like they're trying to like tag them or something. What do you think of those things? I don't know.
As far as that part of research, I really can't comment because I deal more with the nuts and bolts, but I'm very skeptical of all of that. I know that there is a man-made contingent to that, and they want you to think it's alien, but that's a road that I just don't prefer to go down.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I just had to ask because
Mhm.
it's a interesting world, the kind of UFO research world. It goes from
Oh yeah.
very kind of scientific to material based. So where like the work that you do, like when you have craft, you're talking about reports in history, Air Force, military, and then it goes from that to a very kind of esoteric other world view, and it's like it's such a massive range. So
There is a massive range, yes.
it can be hard to know which is which. But and then my last question is
Mhm.
um what what's the best outcome of the Pentagon conference that's happening at the moment?
Right.
These kind of government reports. I mean, what is the best case scenario? Because I don't think they're going to actually just release something, but do you think that there will be it will help gain momentum, it will help bring credibility to the topic, and it will help increase the kind of momentum to a full disclosure?
The best scenario is if the Pentagon goes into their basement vaults and pulls out the evidence they have in the form of the following: 8 by 10 black and white glossy photographs, 8 by 10 color photographs, all of the motion picture film reels for every major conflict in the United States, bring out debris, craft, and bodies, throw that into congressional hearings, give that information to the scientific community as a united coalition of engineers and linguistic experts, people who are qualified to get deeper into these subjects and find out exactly what's going on, and then take that technology, release it to the world in real time so that you have other countries that can come up to the same level. And then you could change the entire world with that technology because you'd make all the utilities completely obsolete overnight. We wouldn't have coal fire plants. We wouldn't have meltdowns anymore. We could clean up the world. We can clean up the oceans. We wouldn't need this secrecy policy anymore. The erosion of the Constitution, this republic is crumbling because it's under the burden of secrecy on these programs. And so, if we were honest with each other, we wouldn't be spending billions of dollars to keep this under wraps. We could integrate that into education. We could integrate that into getting people off the streets. We could integrate that into the infrastructure. We could fix up all the schools and the bridges and the roads. It'd be a completely, if they would just not spend money on the secrecy surrounding this subject, it'd already be a changed United States, but they won't do it.
Okay, I mean that's I quite kind of find that quite helpful though, because that's it. All it takes is just a change. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's quite a hopeful message. I mean, I know there's lots of secrecy and whatever, but that's actually quite reassuring because sometimes it can get quite the topic can get little bit dark or gloomy, but it is nice to know that that's a possibility.
Regardless of what the United States government thinks it's going to do, or they think they're entitled, or they think they can put a lid on all this, the UFOs don't care about that. The UAP don't care about that. The USOs, they don't mind about what our secrecy policy. They're going to continue doing what they're going to do, regardless of what the government does. So this will not end. This will continue going forward. It will not end.
That's great, and I think it's it would be great to, especially I know that you spent a lot of your life researching this and you've been highly invested in it. So it would be great for people like you to be able to take that next step of not having to research it from like a kind of third hand point
Sure.
of view to be
Right.
directly involved.
Absolutely. Well, I just integrate it into a PowerPoint and make it available to everybody. That's the way it should be done. That's absolutely the way we should be done. And we've already paid for this multiple times over with the black budgets. So why should we pay for it again? This should be released. It should be released regardless.
All right, Michael, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop recording there.
no problem. Great.
Uh,